Hi guys, I'm Rex King. Welcome back to another episode of From the Archive. Today we're talking about West Side Story. West Side Story was directed by Jerome Robbins and Robert Wise, and it's based off a Broadway play of the same name. The film's production and casting actually wasn't that problematic. The only issue was that Jerome Robbins was kind of a perfectionist, and as thus he kept changing things and altering scenes to what he felt would be the perfect scene, causing the studio to just hand out money to the production and start to get really worried about how the film was being done. So they ended up firing him from the production 60% way through the film. Luckily, most of what he had devised for the dances in the film and the scenes were integrated into the final cut. Robert Wise made sure that he got credit for what he did and brought him back for the Oscars. This film did really well at the box office. Apparently financially, I could not find the exact numbers, however. It did really well with critics and managed to win 10 Oscars, including one for Best Picture in 1961. And ever since then, it has cemented itself in popular culture. It has been referenced a god amount of times. I cannot count how many things in popular culture reference this film. So, does this movie deserve its timeless classic moniker? Well, let's talk about it. West Side Story is about two rival gangs. The Sharks, led by Bernardo, played by George Charkins. I apologize if I mispronounced that name. And the Jets, led by Riff, played by Russ Tamblyn. And as I said, these two gangs don't get along. They very much hate each other and decide to hold one rumble to end the feud between them once and for all. However, the best friend of Riff and former Jet, called Tony, played by Richard Baymore, ends up falling for Maria, the younger sister of Bernardo, played by Natalie Wood. And this ends up causing a huge amount of tension and basically emphasizes what is going to happen as these two struggle to come to terms with their romantic feelings for each other while trying to deal with the gang violence between their two sides. Now, this film is definitely a discussion of race relations in the United States, as our sharks are mainly Puerto Rican or Cuban-Latin, and our Jets are all white Caucasians. And this film is basically trying to talk about how those relationships, if they do not change, will inevitably lead to tragedy. And that is emphasized by the romantic relationship between Maria and Tony, as this is also a Romeo and Juliet adaptation. And if you do not know how that story goes, spoiler alert, it does not end well. So, the story is admirable and I do enjoy it. It's also both unfortunately and fortunately timeless. It's timeless, unfortunately, because race relations in the United States have not improved as much as we would like to admit. And that is, why the film is so timeless, because we can always relate it to what's going on in modern times. Of course, we wish race relationships were a lot better in the United States, but, yeah, they definitely aren't. Now, that being said, the other main element of the film, the romantic relationship between Tony and Maria, is my problem with the film. Unfortunately, I do not buy this romance. Partially because it's one of the love at first sight stories, and I really, really don't like those. I wish I could say that the romance drives the point home, but I don't buy it, and that's partially because I believe relationships should be built up to, and this film really doesn't build upon their relationship. They just kind of fall in love at first sight, and it's like, oh my god, these characters know nothing about each other. They have no reason to fall in love. It just feels hollow and shallow. That being said, I do want to stress that I do think this is a good story. I think you could have taken the romance out and just focused on the two rival gangs and been able to drive the tragic point home without having to have a Romeo and Juliet story. Then we have the characters, and here's another problem I have with the film. With a few exceptions, most of the characters are not really developed. Maria's your typical lovesick teenager. Tony's your starry-eyed good guy who we're supposed to root for despite knowing nothing about him. And Riff is the leader of the Jets. The only two characters I feel like get a decent amount of development are Bernardo and Anita, played by Rita Moreno, as these two's relationship feels real, and their characters are probably the most interesting of the group of characters that we get. I feel like they should have spent more time developing the other characters. Maybe spent more time specifically developing Riff, as again, I feel like the gang violence and the gang dynamic is what really works in this film. Then we have the performances, and I do believe all the performances are spectacular. Now, all the singing is done via dubbing, so none of the actors here are doing their own singing, and the singing voices are spectacular. But I do want to bring up the fact that all the physical acting done in this movie is amazing, as this film demanded a huge amount of physical work, and every performer does an amazing job with what they are given. And I do think that the performances really help sell the tragic nature of the film. Again, I really wish the characters were better developed, but at least the performances are really, really good, especially when we're talking about the dance numbers. Which brings me to the visuals, as the choreography is amazing. Now, some people are going to be put off by the ballet steps and gang fighting mixed together, and for me this works. I think ballet is a perfect medium for this type of film, as it uses a lot of dancing to tell a story, and that helps with visual storytelling in this particular style of musical. It conveys emotions and it conveys conflict, and I really like the way they use it in this film. I do not think it's distracting. I know a bunch of people who say it is. I don't. I think it fits for what the film is trying to do, and I really like that. Also, the cinematography and set design are brilliant. Now, obviously, this film was done on a set, not actually on location in West Manhattan. Instead, they built a set, and I will say that set design and cinematography managed to make the world feel lived in despite being a built set. And I really like that. Then we have the music, which the score was done by Leonard Bernstein, and the lyrics for the musical numbers was done by Steven Soderheim. And this is probably the best part of the film. The music is amazing. The score alone is spectacular. Now, when it gets to the music numbers, they're really catchy, they're hummable, and I really enjoy them. And it's probably one of the better musicals to come out of the Golden Age, as it took a while for musicals to really take off. And this film really is probably when they start to get really good. Not to bash on films like Wizard of Oz or anything, but I gotta say, after this, before this film, all the musicals that won Best Picture were kind of lackluster, to say the least. So, this musical really stepped up its game, and I really enjoy both the score and the music numbers. If I had to pick my favorite, it would probably be the Tonight number, The quintet. I really enjoy that song, that beat, and I really enjoy the overall feel that that song provides. My least favorite is I'm So Pretty, because I don't feel like that number is necessary, and it kind of just slows down the film to just show that Maria's in love, even though we already know that and don't need a music number to tell us that. So, is West Side Story deserving of the moniker of timeless classic? Yeah. Let me be honest with you guys. I do not love Love at First Sight stories, and this film is no exception. I do not care for Romeo and Juliet. This film is no exception. This film, if it got rid of the romance, would have been fantastic. As it stands, it's still a great movie. I just don't know if I would call it a masterpiece. It's good and fantastic and is definitely a must watch. I want to emphasize that, but it does have its flaws. So, is this film a buy, a stream, or an avoid altogether? Well, it's definitely not an avoid altogether. I did say it was a great movie. So, is it a buy? Well, for this case, I have the 50th anniversary edition, and this comes with a 3-disc set, a DVD, plain DVD, and 2 Blu-rays, which has the remastered version, and also has a commentary by Steven Soderheim, Music Machine, which is them just playing the music numbers, a making of, and basically some of the memories of making the movie that some of the actors have about the movie. I really enjoyed this Blu-ray. I think it has a lot of special features. I do think this film is a buy. Even if it didn't have a ton of special features, I probably would say this is a must-have for any movie collector. Even if you're not a movie collector, you really should own this movie. It is a timeless classic, and if you haven't seen it, I have to emphasize, this film is a must-watch and a must-buy. Anyway, that's what I felt about West Side Story. What do you think about it? Let me know in the comments below. And next time, we're going back to a John Huston movie with The Asphalt Jungle. See you then!